Welcome to the deep dive. We take stacks of source material, wade through it all, and pull out the really fascinating bits so you can get up to speed fast.
Today we're tackling James Abbott McNeill Whistler. He's quite a figure, an American artist-painter, printmaker, mostly active in the UK during the Gilded Age.
And the mission today, it's really about the central paradox, isn't it? His art is incredibly delicate, almost ethereal sometimes. But the man himself, shark tongue, very combative.
Absolutely. That's the core tension we want to unpack.
Yeah.
This contrast between the sort of soft focus of his paintings and the really hard edge of his public personality. We need to look at his aesthetic ideas, but also how that combative persona got tangled up with his genius.
Okay, let's start right there with that duality, because Whistler himself gave us the perfect symbol for it. His signature, it started as a butterfly, right?
Yes. A stylized butterfly, which sounds lovely, doesn't it? Delicate, transient beauty.
Exactly. But it didn't stay that way.
No, it evolved. As he got more involved in arguments, especially around the 1880s, he added a stinger.
A stinger to the butterfly.
Yeah. So you have the delicate art, the butterfly, and the sharp defensive personality, the stinger. It was almost like a warning label right there on the canvas.
He was branding himself, the aesthetic warrior. Okay, this perfectly leads into his big idea, his philosophy. Art for art's sake. What did that actually mean in Victorian England? Because it sounds quite provocative.
Oh, it's hugely provocative. You have to remember, the Victorians generally believed art should have a purpose, a moral lesson, a social commentary, or, at least tell a clear story.
Something you could easily grasp.
Right. And Whistler just threw all that out. No sentimentality, no moral messages. For him, art was its own justification. Its job wasn't to teach or copy reality, but to interpret it, to create visual harmony.
So he was actively fighting the idea that if you paint a person, it has to be about that person's story or character.
Precisely. He famously said, nature is very rarely right, meaning nature provides the raw materials, but the artist needs to select, arrange, improve it. The artist becomes this sort of aesthetic refiner.
And he drove this home with his titles, didn't he? Calling paintings, arrangements, harmonies, nocturnes.
Yes, that musical language was completely intentional. It forced the viewer, or at least tried to think about the painting like music.
Focusing on
the composition, the balance of colors, the tones, the rhythm across the canvas. Not, who is this person? Or what's happening here? He wanted a pure aesthetic response, stripped of all that narrative stuff the public loved.
It's a clever way to try and control how people see the work, but you can immediately see why it would annoy people. He's taking away their story.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the man himself. Where did this aesthetic dictator, this guy who famously hated being from Lowell, Massachusetts, actually come from? Let's look at the early years.
Okay, so born in 1834, Lowell, Mass. A fact he wasn't exactly proud of.
Not remotely. You mentioned that quote from the Ruskin trial. I shall be born when and where I want, and I do not choose to be born in Lowell. Just pure arrogance, but also this desire to completely craft his own identity.
And even as a kid, the signs were there. The temperament.
Apparently so. Moody, prone to tantrums, not great health-wise. But his parents noticed that drawing. That was the one thing that seemed to settle him, focused him.
And that focus got a serious boost from a change of scenery. Russia.
Yes, a really significant period. His father, George Washington Whistler, was a major railroad engineer. Tsar Nicholas Len hired him in 1842 to build the St. Petersburg-Moscow Railway. So off the family went.
That's a huge move. And he started formal art training there.
He did. Private lessons, and then, incredibly young, only 11, he enrolled at the Imperial Academy of Arts in St. Petersburg. So he's getting this rigorous European training early on.
Did he show promise?
Undeniably. There's an account from Sir William Allen, a Scottish artist who met him around 1844. He saw uncommon genius, but also warned his mother, don't push him too hard. The independent streak was already visible.
But that Russian period ended tragically.
Yes, his father died of cholera in 1849. The family returned to America, to Connecticut. And his mother, Anna, a very pious woman, apparently hoped he might become a minister.
A minister. Whistler. That's hard to picture.
Couldn't be further from the path he took. But family connections led to the next rather odd chapter, West Point.
The military academy. How did that happen? He seems like the least likely candidate.
Well, his father had taught drawing there, so the name helped. And despite being really nearsighted and not particularly healthy, he got in 1851.
How did it go? Predictably badly.
Utter disaster, pretty much. He lasted 3 years, hated the authority, got tons of demerits. They called him curly because he wouldn't cut his hair properly. He just wasn't military material. Robert E. Lee was the superintendent then, apparently tried to accommodate him, but eventually Whistler had to go.
And the final straw was that famous chemistry exam moment.
That's the story. Asked to describe silicon, he supposedly declared silicon is a gas.
Wow. Just completely wrong, but stated with
In
confidence.
his later joke about it, if silicon were a gas, I would have been a general one day. It's pure Whistler. Wit out over substance almost.
But West Point wasn't a total loss artistically.
No, the drawing and map-making instruction he got from Robert W. Weir was actually very good. He used that skill for his first job, briefly, mapping the U.S. coast.
Another job he hated.
Found it incredibly boring. Apparently, he got transferred out of the main mapping work because his bosses found sea serpents and mermaids drawn in the margins of the official Coastal Survey maps.
Classic. But he learned etching there.
Yes, in the Coast Survey's etching division. Only for a couple of months, but he picked up the technique. That became really important later on, a major part of his output and income.
So map making wasn't for him. What next?
He decided art was the only way, got some money together, told his mother he was off to Paris to study, and basically never looked back. Left the U.S. for good.
Paris, 1855,
Yeah.
the bohemian life.
Absolutely. Threw himself right into it. Studied for a while in Charles Glaire's studio. It wasn't long, but Glaire left a mark.
In what way?
Two key ideas stuck with him. First, the importance of line drawing over color. That's quite traditional, tracing back to Ingres.
Okay, in the second.
That black is the fundamental color, the key to tonal harmony.
Right, and that's interesting because it immediately sets him apart from.
The Impressionists, exactly. They were coming up around then, obsessed with pure color, light, often banning black from their palettes altogether. Whistler, influenced by Glaire, saw black as essential, the anchor for his tonal studies. Big difference in approach.
But while his technique looked back towards line and tone, his subject matter was influenced by the moderns.
Yes, he fell in with Gustave Courbet, Edouard Manet, the poet, Baudelaire. Baudelaire especially pushed artists to tackle modern life, the reality of the city, warts and all, not just old myths. So Whistler's absorbing this modern subject matter, even while his technique focused more on atmosphere and arrangement than strict realism like Courbet's.
Okay, so he's got these influences swirling. Let's follow him to London, where his signature style really starts to emerge, the white girl period.
Right. He makes London his main base from about 1859, settles in Chelsea. He has an early success at the piano in 59. It's a portrait of his niece and mother, and critics noted the composition, the handling of blacks and whites, still quite controlled.
But the one that really caused a stir was Symphony in White, number 1, The White Girl from 1862.
That's the one. A portrait of Joanna Heffernan, who was his mistress and also managed his business affairs. She's standing in a white dress against white curtains on a bearskin rug.
And Whistler insisted it was purely what? A study in white.
Exactly, just an arrangement of different white tones. But nobody saw it that way.
No, they immediately started reading things into it. The white dress, her expression.
They saw symbolism everywhere, lost innocence, connections to Wilkie Collins's popular novel, The Woman in White, all things Whistler vehemently denied.
It must have infuriated him.
Oh, undoubtedly. And the official art world wasn't impressed either. The Royal Academy in London rejected it. Too unconventional, maybe seemed a bit suggestive.
But it got shown eventually.
Yes, at the Salon des Refusés in Paris in 1863. That was the exhibition of works rejected by the official salon. It got a lot of attention there, though Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe kind of stole the show.
So even early on, we see this clash. Whistler pushing pure aesthetics, the public demanding meaning and story.
Precisely. And around this time, his style also starts absorbing other influences. Japonism becomes really important.
Right, the influence of Japanese art. How did that start?
He was collecting blue and white Chinese porcelain, studying Japanese prints. He got fascinated by the designs, the flat perspectives, the asymmetry, and those potter's marks he studied. That's supposedly where the idea for the butterfly signature came from.
Ah, interesting connection. And we see this influence in the paintings.
Clearly. He painted Heffernan again in works like The Little White Girl and Lady of the Landlicks. And she's wearing kimonos, holding fans, surrounded by Asian objects. He's using those Japanese design principles, the flat patterns, the different sense of space, to push his art further towards decoration and harmony, away from realism.
But this period also had some major personal drama. His friendship with Courbet ended.
Yes, that fell apart. The story goes that Heffernan posed nude for Courbet. Some historians think she might have been the model for Courbet's really explicit paintings, like L'Origine du Monde.
Wow. That would certainly strain a friendship.
To say the least. It seems it revealed an intimacy between Courbet and Heffernan that Whistler couldn't accept. The friendship was broken.
And then another upheaval. His mother arrives.
Yes, Anna McNeill Whistler came to London in January 1864. Very devout, very proper. Whistler had been living this bohemian life with Heffernan.
So things had to change.
Radically. He wrote to a friend about the general upheaval, said he had to empty my house and purify it from cellar to eaves. Heffernan had to move out, though she continued to model for him and help with his business.
That must have been awkward. But his mother's presence actually helped him professionally in Victorian London.
Ironically, yes. While it cramped his personal style, having his respectable, pious mother living with him gave him a veneer of, well, respectability.
Made him seem less like a potentially scandalous bohemian artist.
Exactly. Patrons felt safer. So, this very traditional domestic setup actually provided the stability for him to produce some of his most aesthetically radical work.
Okay, that stability sets the stage for his next big phase, the Nocturnes, his portrait work, and getting deeper into his technique.
The Nocturnes really started with a strange trip he took in 1866 to Valparaiso, Chile. Why he went is still a bit debated. He claimed it was political, something about supporting Chile against Spain.
But artistically, it was significant.
Very. He painted his first night scenes there, views of the harbor. Mostly blues and greens, very atmospheric. He initially called them moonlights.
And he brought that idea back to London.
Yes, applied it to the Thames River at night and also to Cremorne Gardens, which was a popular pleasure garden famous for fireworks. These paintings owe a huge debt to Japanese prints, especially Hiroshige, in their composition and mood.
How did he actually paint them? The technique sounds unusual.
It was. Very thin paint, almost like watercolor, used as a base wash. Then he'd add touches of color, little flicks and dots to suggest lights on the water, boats, fireworks. It wasn't about detail at all.
Just capturing the feeling, the light, the tone.
Precisely. Evocation, not description.
And the name Nocturne, where did that come from?
That was suggested by his patron, Frederick Leyland. Leyland was an amateur musician, loved Chopin's Nocturnes. Whistler jumped on it.
He liked the musical connection.
Loved it. But he also loved, as he admitted, that it proves an irritation to the critics.
Ah, the stinger again.
Always. He said the title does so poetically say all that I want to say and no more than I wish. It denied the critics an easy narrative hook.
Which leads us perfectly to the most famous painting associated with him, which is also the most misunderstood in terms of his intention. Arrangement in Gray and Black No. 1, or, as everyone knows it,
Whistler's Mother, painted in 1871. And the story behind it is quite practical, really.
his scheduled model didn't show up.
That's right. And his mother, Anna, was there. He started trying to paint her standing, but she found it too tiring. So they switched to the seated pose we all know. It took ages, dozens of sittings.
And despite it being his mother, he insisted it wasn't about motherhood.
He really tried to push the formal aspects, call it an arrangement. He wanted people to see the composition, the balance of the black dress against the gray wall, the geometric shapes of the curtain, and the picture frame balancing her profile, a purely aesthetic exercise.
But the public and posterity just didn't buy it.
Not really. Initially, it got a pretty cool reception. It was too simple, too austere for Victorian tastes. The Royal Academy rejected it at first, then hung it badly.
But it survived and grew in stature.
Immensely. It was eventually bought by the French government in 1891, which was a huge deal for Whistler's prestige. But its massive fame as an icon came later, especially during the Great Depression when it toured the U.S. It was billed as this priceless symbol of motherhood.
Became the ultimate American icon, even though it lives in France. As Peter Schjeldahl said, the most important American work residing outside the United States.
And it's the ultimate irony, isn't it? The painting is famous for the very sentimentality Whistler tried to reject. The public imposed the meaning he fought against his whole life.
We should also touch on his working method for portraits, because that mother portrait took so long, he was famously slow.
Notoriously slow. William Merritt Chase, another painter who sat for him, called him a veritable tyrant for making him pose for hours on end into the twilight.
Was he just indecisive, or was there a method to the madness?
Oh, there was definitely a method. We have a great description from another sitter, Arthur Eddy, from 1894. It really explains his tonal approach.
How did Eddy describe it?
He said Whistler worked quickly in terms of brushstrokes, but used very thin paint, building up countless layers. He'd start the whole canvas, figure and background, in muted gray-brown tones that almost merged with the canvas itself.
So not painting features first.
No. He'd gradually intensify the figure a little, then the background a little, going back and forth. The whole picture emerged together.
Like developing a photograph.
That's exactly the analogy Eddie used. He said the portrait developed as an entirety, very much as a negative under the action of the chemicals, comes out gradually. It ensures the whole thing is unified, tonally balanced from the start.
That obsession with total control over the image, it seems like it extended beyond the canvas itself.
Absolutely. Which leads us right into the period where things got really fiery, the peak of controversy.
The butterfly definitely grows its stinger now.
Around 1880 is when he formally adds the stinger to the signature, and he becomes obsessed with frames, how paintings are hung, the whole environment. The aesthetic experience didn't stop at the edge of the canvas for him.
And this desire for total control blew up spectacularly with the Peacock Room project.
Oh, the Peacock Room. 1876-77. Commissioned by Frederick Leyland, the same patron who suggested Nocturnes.
The one with the big porcelain collection.
Right. Leyland just wanted Whistler to make some minor adjustments to his dining room to better show off the china. The room itself was already designed by someone else, Thomas Jekyll.
But Whistler saw an opportunity for more than minor changes.
He saw a canvas, Leyland went away, Whistler got started, and just took over. He painted the entire room, walls, shutters, ceiling, and these incredible intense blue-greens with gold leaf peacock motifs. It became this immersive, total work of art.
In the process.
In the process, as he put it, he forgot everything in my joy of it, including the fact that he painted over very expensive 16th century Cordoba leather wall hangings that Leyland had paid a fortune for, about £1,000.
Leyland must have been furious when he got back.
Apoplectic. Not just about the leather, but the massive cost overruns. They had a huge, bitter argument.
And Whistler, being Whistler, responded how?
By painting a savage caricature of Leyland as a greedy peacock covered in gold coins playing a piano. He titled it The Gold Scab. Eruption and filthy lucre. Filthy being a nasty pun on Leyland's frilly shirts and filthy lucre.
Wow. Torpedoing his relationship with his main patron after destroying his dining room. That takes nerve.
Or just an absolute conviction in his own artistic rightness, above all else. The irony, of course, is that the Peacock Room is now seen as a masterpiece. Charles Lang Freer bought the whole thing later, and it's installed at the Smithsonian. A treasure.
But the immediate result was financial trouble for Whistler, which set up the even bigger conflict, the Ruskin trial.
Exactly. The Peacock Room cost him dearly, and then came the confrontation with John Ruskin, the most powerful art critic in England at the time. 1877.
What sparked it?
Whistler exhibited one of his nocturnes, Nocturne in black and gold, The Falling Rocket, a fireworks scene at the Grosvenor Gallery, which was a more progressive alternative to the Royal Academy. Ruskin, who championed detailed, morally uplifting art, saw it and was absolutely scathing.
He didn't just dislike it, he attacked Whistler personally.
Viciously. He wrote that he never expected to hear a coxcomb ask 200 guineas for flinging a pot of paint in the public's face.
Flinging a pot of paint, that's basically calling him a con artist.
Precisely. An attack on his skill, his integrity, his price. Whistler, predictably, sued Ruskin for libel. He wanted £1,000 in damages.
And the trial became famous for Whistler's defense of his prices.
Yes. When Ruskin's lawyer pressed him about charging 200 guineas for a painting that only took him maybe 2 days to paint, Whistler gave that legendary reply.
What was it again?
The lawyer asked, "The labor of 2 days is that for which you ask 200 guineas." And Whistler said, "No, I ask it for the knowledge I have gained in the work of a lifetime."
Perfect encapsulation of his belief. The value isn't the hours, it's the expertise.
A brilliant defense of artistic value, but it didn't quite work out financially.
He won the case, technically.
He won, but the jury awarded him only 1 farthing in damages, the smallest coin imaginable. A symbolic victory, but a financial disaster. He had to split the court costs, and that, on top of the debts from building his fancy new house, bankrupted him by May 1879.
He lost everything.
House, art collection, possessions all auctioned off. The stinger proved costly. But even in failure, he controlled the narrative. He published his own witty, biased account of the trial, Whistler v. Ruskin, Art and Art Critics. That later became the centerpiece of his book, The Gentle Art of Making Enemies, turning defeat into publicity.
He was relentlessly resilient, which brings us to the final phase, recovery, more wit, and his lasting impact. He didn't just fade away after bankruptcy.
Not at all. He immediately got a commission to do a set of 12 etchings in Venice, left almost right away in 1879.
A fresh start. How long was he there?
Supposed to be 3 months. Ended up staying for 14. He was incredibly productive.
What did he produce?
Over 50 etchings, more nocturne paintings, and over 100 pastels. And crucially, he focused on a different Venice.
Oh.
Not the grand landmarks, but the back canals, the little workshops, the everyday life.
Finding his own view again.
Exactly. He wrote about finding a Venice in Venice that the others never seemed to have perceived. It was, again, about his unique artistic interpretation being superior.
And this Venetian work was well received.
Yes. The etchings and pastels sold well, helped him get back on his feet financially, and they were hugely influential on younger American artists who were in Venice at the time, like Frank Duveneck and Robert Blum. They saw his atmospheric approach and were inspired.
So he returns to London with his reputation somewhat restored, maybe even enhanced among the younger generation.
Yes, and he capitalized on that by delivering his big lecture, the 10 o'clock lecture, in 1885.
This was his manifesto.
Pretty much. His polished, public defense of art for art's sake. He laid out his whole philosophy. Art is separate from life. It doesn't need a moral. The artist is an interpreter, not a copier. Nature needs improving by the artist's vision. All his key ideas.
And this lecture led to another famous feud.
Yes, with Oscar Wilde. Wilde initially praised the lecture, called it a masterpiece. But Wilde being Wilde, he couldn't resist also making fun of Whistler's massive ego.
Two great wits colliding.
It became a legendary public spat, trading barbs in the press. Wilde said something like, "Whistler has the highest opinion of himself, and I entirely concur." Whistler shot back, asking what Wilde had to do with art besides dining with artists and being laughed at.
Brutal. Their friendship completely dissolved.
Totally. It got so bitter that Wilde later seemed to get revenge in The Picture of Dorian Gray. The doomed artist character, Basil Hallward, is widely seen as being based on Whistler, the sensitive artist ultimately destroyed.
Throughout all this, Whistler cultivated a very specific public image, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He was actually a small man, physically quite slight. But he dressed like a dandy monocle, distinctive clothes, and his way of speaking was apparently very studied, lots of pauses, like he was sketching with words. It was all part of the performance.
What about his personal life in these later years?
Well, through the 70s and 80s, he lived with Maud Franklin. She was his model, his mistress. They had 2 children together. Her patience during those endless sittings was really crucial for his portrait work.
But he eventually married.
Yes. In 1888, he married Beatrice Godwin Trixie. She was the widow of E.W. Godwin, an architect friend. By all accounts, it was a happy marriage, brought him stability.
But it ended sadly.
Very sadly. Trixie developed cancer and died in 1896. It hit him extremely hard. He said himself he never really got over her death.
Professionally, though, did he achieve the recognition he craved?
He did, in important ways. His book, The Gentle Art of Making Enemies, came out in 1890 and kept him in the public eye, cemented his reputation as this witty provocateur.
And the big one, the French government buying Whistler's mother.
That was huge for him. 1891. The price wasn't astronomical, but the prestige being acquired by the French state, housed in the Luxembourg Museum, that meant more to him than money. It validated his European artistic identity over his American roots.
And his artistic style, tonalism, had a real impact.
Definitely. Especially in America.
Yeah.
Artists like John Singer Sargent, William Merritt Chase, many others were influenced by his focus on mood, atmosphere, subtle color harmony, soft edges. The tonalist movement owed a huge debt to him.
He died in London in 1903. Looking back, how do we sum him up?
It really comes back to that core contradiction, the butterfly and the stinger. He was a genuine innovator in painting, etching, pastel. He fundamentally changed how people thought about art's purpose, pushing aesthetics over narrative.
And he did it all while being this incredibly sharp, often difficult public figure, using his wit as another tool.
Exactly. So the key takeaways: that relentless focus on tonalism, art for art's sake, the surprising origin of the butterfly signature from Asian ceramics, and the very real cost of his artistic battles, the bankruptcy after the Ruskin trial being the prime example.
But the biggest takeaway might be that ultimate irony we discussed with Whistler's mother.
Yeah. He fights his whole life for his work to be seen as pure form, pure arrangement, rejecting sentiment.
And his most famous painting becomes a global icon because of its perceived sentiment, celebrated as the ultimate symbol of motherhood, especially in America, the country he tried to distance himself from. His intention got completely overridden.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Whistler proved an artist could fight ferociously for their vision, control their narrative, battle critics, risk everything for their aesthetic principles. But in the end, does the meaning the public finds in an artwork eventually eclipse whatever the artist originally intended, no matter how hard they fought?
It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.